One more quick thing that I'm not particularly fond of about this camera is its viewfinder, which is quite small and not quite as bright as the one I'd get with the D90. It does have the same 11-point autofocus system, which is nice. Much better than the stupid 3-point thing you used to have to put up with in my D40X. That was terrible. But the autofocus system is pretty nice. I do just wish that it had a bit bigger viewfinder, as for instance my D90 does. And since this is in the tiny little body, it's also got the very slow reacting shutter. So you can see it's not quite as snappy, snap, 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 as my D90 is, or indeed as the D40X, or excuse me, not the D40X, but the D3X that I reviewed was. And that was a very nice camera with, frankly, a pretty nice sound it made, as you guys can probably remember. I was pretty fond of the of how quick and snappy the shutter was on that. And essentially all that is it affects your blackout time on here. So by the point where the mirror flips up and flips down, it's slower or faster depending on essentially how expensive your camera is. As you go from this, it's kind of slow. Move up to the D90, it's a bit better. Move up all the way to the D3X, and it's just real quick. And it's pretty nice. I do like it. Now, one other kind of interesting thing is you can even go so far as to slow that down almost entirely with the D5000's quiet mode right here. So if we select quiet mode and take a picture, listen to it now. Did you hear how it was just... It was very, very much slowed down. And essentially what that does is it stops the stuff in there from flying around too fast and making a bunch of noise. For instance, if you're bending over a little critter or something and you don't want to startle it, I guess, by the snap of your camera, you can put it on quiet mode and it'll significantly slow down the amount of noise generated. So again, I'll just do this real quick. We'll go from normal, just standard single shot mode, ready, steady, like that, to quiet mode, which is much quieter, for instance, like this. Okay, I'm sure you could hear the difference there. This isn't something that's particularly useful for me as a yearbook event sports type photographer. In fact, for sports, this is just going to slow you down and make you mad. But it could have its uses. Not that I've really done the type of photography that would lend itself to this kind of use, but I honestly thought that was kind of a cool thing. If not particularly useful, still kind of cool. One thing I do want to make sure I talk briefly about with this camera is its kit lens. This is the, let's get up close here, this is the Nikon AFS Nikkor 18 to 55mm 1 3.5 5.6G VR. So this is essentially the new version of the one that I have here on my D40X, which is the old DX Nikon AFS 18 to 55. Same thing essentially, but this one has, as evidenced by this little switch, there it is, it has VR. For a wide lens like this, VR isn't as necessary as it would be for a bigger zoom, but VR is always a nice thing to have. And it works pretty well on this lens. It's pretty quiet. It doesn't make that ear-splitting noise like my 55 to 200 does, so if you can listen, and just a little clunk when it turns on and off, it really doesn't make that much noise. And it works well, since this is such a wide lens. You really don't need the VR that much anyway, but it really does kind of make it nicer when you're shooting handheld. I was just playing with it and jiggling it like that, and I can see that it's holding rock steady in there, so that's kind of nice. One thing I do really like about this lens is that it doesn't, at least in the tests that I ran, I didn't do it very thoroughly, but it does not befall the same plight that this lens does, which was the really nasty flaring that the old 18-55 gave you. This one will still flare. Don't get me wrong, but when I pretty much tried to replicate the circumstances, this one did not flare as nearly as bad as this one, which was just a big purple splotch right on the center of your photo. This one was just kind of an amber sort of dot down towards the bottom right. And I'll probably show you the one picture I have where you can see that. Then I shot it straight up towards the sun, and it really didn't flare at all. I was pretty surprised. But you guys can take a look at that and see that for yourself. The other thing I really like about this lens is the zoom is a bit firmer and a bit smoother than this lens. Obviously that's not something you can feel through the camera, but I can definitely feel this one takes a lot less effort to zoom, and personally it feels kind of cheap. This is a bit smoother and it's a bit firmer, so it just kind of does feel a bit nicer. Other than that, these lenses are essentially identical. I don't know the exact specifications as to like the different components and stuff inside the lenses, but for people who are going to buy this kind of lens with this kind of camera, you're not really going to care. All you're going to care is that it works and it takes pictures, which it does, and it does quite well. Okay, one quick little experiment I want to try is just to prove that this is essentially the same camera mechanically wise as the D90. I'm going to take a picture with the D5000 with this lens at a certain setting. I'm then going to take this lens off the D5000, stick it on my D90, and put the exact same exposure on here, and you'll be able to see that the pictures are pretty much identical. So let's go ahead and check that out. Okay, so hopefully I did that well, so you can see that these cameras are very, very similar in terms of their performance. And obviously everything was identical. Exposure, lens, every single thing was identical with the exception of the camera body. First one was the D5000, second one was the D90. So I hope you could see that fairly well on there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw up some other pictures that I took with the D5000. I went down to a sleepy little port town near where I live and just shot around for a little while, took some pictures, all with the D5000 and this lens, exclusively this lens. So hopefully that'll give you some sort of idea of what you can expect from this camera right out of the box. So I'm going to put these up and I hope you enjoy them. So I hope you guys enjoyed seeing those pictures that I shot with the D5000. And on that note, I think that's all I have to say about the D5000 at this time. I've pretty much covered everything I think I wanted to. Don't think I've really forgotten anything that important. If you guys have any questions, you know what to do, and I will do my best to answer them. I really can't think of anything else. Bottom line, this is the best camera for people who don't want to spend a lot of money on a camera. It's light, cheerful, and easy to use, unlike the D90, which can intimidate some with its buttons and its big LCD screen, all the displays and stuff. That might put some people off. If you want the kind of performance you would get from essentially the not the D700, excuse me, the D300, because the chip that's in here, the sensor that's in here, originated with the D300. So you're getting a really good chip for a pretty decent price. You're getting this for, I don't know what these run for, probably $750, $800, lens included. So you're getting it for like $1,000 less than you'd get a D300S at this point. So all in all, it is a really nice camera. It takes some good pictures, but for me personally, this is not something I would go out and buy, just because it is a little amateurish, which for most people who buy this camera is great. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is a nice camera, but for me, I need things to work when I need them to work, and I can't be thinking about, oh, menu and oh, ISO and punch on the buttons. I just need to be able to hit a button, roll a wheel, and go. You won't really get much of that with this camera. So if that's something, if you need speed and quality, the cheapest you can get is the D90. If you just need quality, something light, something fun, this will do you real well. My name is Nate, and I hope you've enjoyed this review of the Nikon D5000.